One nation takes dining far more seriously than any other. Italy. So much so that not only have they perfected the recipes that make up the nation's cuisine, but set up rules ensuring that it's perfect every single time. This is the world of Italian food law. Italy is a nation that cares very deeply about the food it eats. And why wouldn't they? The Italian landscape is perfect for growing so many different types of grains, vegetables, and livestock. And the ocean is perfect for harvesting many different types of seafood. But never shall the two meet. Not to mention that the cuisine emanates beauty and its simplicity. Olive Garden could never compare with its gimmicky dishes such as the 5-cheese ziti al forno. That's the number of cheeses you put on something when you lack technique, and you know it. It's the same reason why you don't see endless breadsticks in Florence. You just see bread. You're already in Italy, they don't have to convince you to come in. But to quickly expand on Olive Garden knowing that they're not proper Italian, they actually have a school over in Tuscany where occasionally they send 100 or so of their chefs to learn that the food that they're making isn't actually Italian. But because they learned that in Italy, they can say they were trained in Italy, and then they can go home and make the same stuff that corporate was going to put on the menu anyways. But now be a little more pompous about it. And while at the school, more than likely, drink far too much red wine. You might be familiar with the memes of an Italian husband being tormented by his wife who takes a bundle of spaghetti and snaps it in half. Something that is very rude, but not illegal. If you wanted to, you could break spaghetti as many times as you like. When it comes to long pastas, the names are generally based on width rather than length. For example, if you take a spaghetti and make it thinner, you have spaghettini. Very thin, and it becomes a fettuccine. Going the other direction, a thicker spaghetti is a spaghettoni, and then thicker than that you got a stringazzi, and if you take a thick spaghetti and pop a hole in it, you have yourself a bucatini. Take a spaghetti and make it flat and you have yourself a fettuccine. Even flatter is a tagliatelle, and if you're getting real silly with it, pappardelle. On the topic of pasta, let's get to our first law and the only one that pertains to the topic, which is what pasta must be made from. This is a pasta dough, and if you like to make it yourself, all you need is a couple cups of flour, 3 eggs, a pinch of salt, and a little bit of olive oil. Form a well in the middle of the flour and then combine everything together working from the middle outward. And when it comes together as a dough, knead it for 5 to 10 minutes to let the proteins really develop. Or you can throw it into a stand mixer with a hook attachment. That'll probably save on some pretty hard work. Then let it rest for about 4 hours and it will look something like this. To give it a nice color, you want to use eggs with a nice orangey yolk, the omega-3 variety, but if you don't have those handy, any eggs will do. When it comes to making rules for pasta, regulating shapes is something that is never going to happen. There are hundreds of shapes, they differ from region to region, and everyone makes them slightly differently. To do so would be quite the Herculean task. Not to be confused with a Heraclean task, which would be the Greek equivalent. Speaking of shapes, what we're going to be making here is a simple tagliatelle. So we'll take our pasta dough, break it into 4 even pieces. Anything we don't use today can be frozen off. That way the next time we're craving fresh pasta, we have dough ready to go. So we got our 1 ball of pasta. Dust everything with a healthy amount of flour. Get a little bit of flour in the pasta roller. Give it an initial squish here so it goes through the machine. You want to take your flattened dough and send it through the pasta roller 2 or 3 times at the largest setting. In a process called laminating. From there, we'll steadily increase the thickness 1 at a time, making sure to guide our dough through the roller. If at any point it feels like it's struggling to go through at a thickness, just send it through once or twice at that same level. Depending on how much you're rolling, you might not have to go all the way down to 0. Now that we have our pasta dough rolled out, we just gotta cut into tagliatelle shapes, which are fairly long noodles, so we'll just cut this in half. And then make each noodle about a finger's width or so. It doesn't need to be perfect, but try to keep them kind of consistent. And there you have fresh tagliatelle. So when you're making pasta at home, you can make it however you like. But in 1967, there was a law passed codifying the minimum standards for pasta that's going to market, has to maintain a standard of quality and not cheapen this ambassador of Italian cuisine. Those rules being, all dry pasta must be made exclusively with durum wheat, use of soft wheat flour is prohibited with the exception of fresh pasta up to 3%, protein content must be at least 10.5% with humidity not exceeding 12.5%. And outside of that, you can do whatever you want. There are some pastas that are typically made with ingredients other than durum wheat, such as pizzo cherry, a buckwheat pasta from Valtellini. There was once an attempt at standardizing this by the Teggio Pizzocero Academy, stating that all pizzo cherry should be made with 75% buckwheat and 25% whole wheat. An attempt that did not go over well because several families will make it with exclusively buckwheat, whereas other families will use their own ratios. Is pizzo cherry compliant under pasta law? Yes. All you have to do is specify the special ingredients used and call it by its specific name. The law is mainly there to stop people from cutting corners and making an inferior pasta. If you start making spaghetti with like buckwheat and then don't tell anyone, that's kind of when the law kicks in. So you're probably wondering what to do with this fresh pasta you just made. You can hang it up to dry and then enjoy it later, or you can enjoy it as is. Just take a pot of boiling water, make sure to season it generously, toss it in there for 2 to 3 minutes, and then take it straight from the pot into a pan with a little garlic, olive oil, maybe a splash of white wine. Crack a little black pepper on there, garnish with a little parsley, toss on a few slices of your favorite hard cheese, and there you go. It's ready to be enjoyed. Now the rules surrounding pasta, not all that stringent, but something that is stringent is Neapolitan pizza. You know how an old park or a building can be designated as a historical site? Well, in that same spirit, there's a similar designation in the EU for food called the Traditional Specialty Guarantee. Currently, there are 64 dishes registered under this, and outside of Italy, you have hay milk from Austria, lukanka, a type of sausage from Bulgaria, and serrano ham from Spain. Since Neapolitan is registered under this scheme, anybody who wants to make an official Neapolitan pizza needs to follow the guidelines. But if they want to make a Neapolitan style pizza, not so much. But luckily for us, the Association Versace Pizza Napoletana has helped us out a bunch by creating a handy, easy to navigate, and concise 28-page PDF that anyone can go download to make an official Neapolitan pizza themselves to spec. Not to be confused with a pizza made with speck, which is a type of cured ham. And that's what we're going to do to the best of our ability here today. Let's start with the ingredients. To make a Neapolitan pizza dough, we're going to need 800 to 900 grams of flour, 0.05 to 1.5 grams of yeast, 20 to 30 grams of salt, and 500 milliliters of water. We'll combine our flour and salt into one bowl, and in a measuring cup we'll combine warm, but not hot, water with our yeast to help waken it up. From there, we're just going to take everything, mix it all together, and we don't need to work it as much as we did the pasta dough. We just want everything to be combined and hold a roundish shape. We're going to need to let this sit overnight, so make things easier when we take it out of the bowl, we'll just do a little olive oil around the outside. You know it's ready to go when it's roughly doubled in size. The next day, we'll take it out of the bowl and cut it up into pizza portions. The official guideline is between 200 and 280 grams. And if you have any dough left over, just roll it out and make yourself a breadstick. Like so. And then we'll let those portions proof for another 2 hours before we start making our pizza. And it will look a little something like this. So here we have our pizza dough, which has been sitting out for about 2 hours. Now to make this into a pizza, we'll dust our working surface in flour, take our dough ball, get it nicely coated so it's not sticking to our fingers. And what you're going to want to do is make a crust around the outside and flatten out the middle. Like so. You can see the raised edge around the outside, and that's really going to help us build our shape. And now to stretch into a proper pizza diameter, you just want to get it onto your knuckles and turn it around. No need to go too fast. If you feel some areas are a little thick, just go over them one more time. And that will give us our pizza dough. Now for the fun part, the ingredients. To make this as authentic as possible, we basically have to go to Campania. But we can make a close approximation with what we have on hand. For the tomatoes, the guideline specifically says San Marzanos hand crushed or sliced. I don't have those. So instead, we're going to use these other authentic crushed tomatoes, which were almost definitely not crushed by hand. And despite having a tab on them, were designed to be opened with a can opener. The tab's just there for show. I know how to open a can. Once the tomato sauce goes on, you're going to want to work really quickly. So take those tomatoes, using a spoon, get right to the edge. Do a healthy coating. The cheese specifically should be a mozzarella di bufala campana, which once again, we do not have, but we do have this very nice buffalo mozzarella. When it comes to the size of our pizza, it should be anywhere between 22 centimeters and 35 centimeters, which ours fits comfortably within. And when you're stretching the dough, you don't want a deviance of any more than 0.25 centimeters, which is roughly this much. So closer look. To cook it off, it needs to be done exclusively with a wood-fired oven. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have a wood-fired oven. So instead, what we're going to do is take a cast iron pan, pop it in the oven, and then set the oven to broil. Leave the cast iron pan in there for about half an hour or so it gets really, really hot. That way, as soon as you throw the dough on there, it starts cooking immediately. To make the transfer process as easy as possible, we'll just put our pizza onto a plate. That way we can slide it straight into our cast iron pan. Give it a little slide around on the plate to make sure it's not sticking. And if it is, just toss a little flour underneath. The pan will be extraordinarily hot, so you want to use 2 towels, or 3, and then just slide it in there. Might hear a little sizzle even. I'm wearing a lapel microphone, so I'm not going to bring it too close to myself. Now in a wood-fired oven, this process would take about 90 seconds at the most. But for us in a cast iron pan, it'll probably take closer to 5 to 6 minutes. But as soon as you start seeing a couple charred bits start to form, you're really going to want to keep an eye on it. Because that's when it goes from charred bits to charred in its entirety. And when it's all said and done, the end result will look a little something like this. Now we'll just garnish it with a few basil leaves, brush the edges with olive oil, and there you have it, a Neapolitan style pizza. When it comes to the toppings for your pizza, there actually isn't that many rules, despite how I made it sound earlier. As long as you're using ingredients that can be found around Naples, you're probably in the clear. So not pepperoni, because that's American. Now when you're making something that requires specific ingredients from a specific region, there is something that can help you find those things. A label that will read, Denominazione di Origine Protetta, or D.O.P for short. When you see this label, it means what you have in your hands is from the region it's meant to be from and handled in a way that lines up with tradition. Some of the places you might find this label is San Marzano tomatoes, cheeses, and charcuteries. One of the main reasons behind this label is that when people who might not be familiar with a certain ingredient, such as guanciale, they get the best version of it and it doesn't taint the legacy of something that's been made basically the same way for centuries. Not to mention that Italian cuisine barely exists. By that, I mean it's a collection of hundreds, thousands of communities who do things in a similar way, but the end result is drastically different. What makes its way across the Atlantic doesn't even begin to tell the story. The world of charcuterie runs deeper than you will ever know. Another reason for this label is that the terroir of the land makes a huge difference in the flavor of the ingredients. And that matters a lot since so many dishes consist of only 4 to 5 ingredients. Like take for example the pizza we made earlier. That was like 7 ingredients, and 4 of them were in the dough. But nothing exemplifies terroir more than the humble tomato, an ingredient that only made its way to Italy in the 15th century from the Americas, an ingredient that most people at the time would have been quite weary of, with it being a nightshade. And now, it's in everything. Okay, not everything, but like several things. With so many differences in the climate, the makeup of the soil, and volcanic activity, flavor is going to change drastically depending on where you are. And this label makes sure no one's cutting corners by growing tomatoes in an area that might be better for growing tomatoes, but won't make the same flavor. I mean, they can still do that, but they just can't put the authentic label on it now. A few other examples of what is D.O.P and why it's D.O.P include Parmesan Reggiano, which has to be from the Parm and Reggio Emilia region. Balsamic vinegar can only receive this designation if it's from Modena or also the Reggio Emilia region. And Prosciutto di Parma is D.O.P if it comes from the Reggio Emilia region. Along with D.O.P, there are some other more relaxed indications that you might see on packaging, such as IGP, which stands for Protected Geographical Indication. And to get that, all you need to do is trace the ingredient back to the place it originates from. You might also see Made in Italy on some packaging, and all that means is that product was made in Italy. And there you have it. Now you know more about the world of food regulations from the nation of Italy. There are several more things that fall into the category of etiquette, but I'm sure there's a Watch Mojo video for that one. And if you want to see it covered on this channel, I do know someone who dabbles in the world of etiquette. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, subscribe, maybe send this to someone who you think might be breaking some Italian food laws. And tell them to stop it, because crime doesn't pay. Bye now.